half of the states work with what's called lien theory. Florida is a lien theory state. So is New Jersey. Instrument that they use is a mortgage deed. We already decided the mortgage has two parts. One is the mortgage part where the borrower owns the house and the bank has a what? Lien on the house. And the other part is the promissory note. That's the lien theory. Okay? The title is in whose name? Borrower. The mortgage deed lien is filed by the lender. And therefore, in order to get it out of the borrower's name and into the lender's name, we have to go to what? We have to go to court, which is known as the judicial system. Okay? So in the state of Florida, in order to get the name of the owner from the borrower's name to the lender's name, they have to go to court. Alright? In judicial foreclosure, the loan instrument is a mortgage. We just did that. Foreclosure or court-ordered action is used for the proceeding. Now we're going to talk about the other half, of which I own an investment property, which I should never have bought, but at the time I didn't know all this stuff. Now I know it. So anyway, it's title theory. And what that is, the loan instrument there is called a trust deed. And what's in this trust deed? The title is in the lender's name, which means who owns it? The lender. Whereas here, who owns it? The borrower. Okay, so in Colorado, which is the title theory, the lender owns the home. In fact, when I signed the trust deed and didn't read it back then, as most people don't, when I signed that trust deed, what it said in that trust deed was, if you don't pay your mortgage, we have the right to sell it right away. As soon as you stop paying your mortgage, we have the right to sell it on the courthouse steps. Because it's a non-judicial system, which means no what? No court. That's it. I've already pre-signed in my trust deed that if I don't pay, that they have the right to sell it on the courthouse steps. Half the country is a title theory. In fact, in Barbara's handout, you actually have a map of the country, and I'm telling you which states are title and which states are lien. You also have information in Barbara's handouts there, which tells you every state what their foreclosure days are and what their redemption period is. So this is for you to put in your, make a copy and put in your short sale presentation book. Okay, now we know that a non-judicial generally takes less time than judicial because we don't have to go to what? Court. And in your book on figure 5.1, you also have an overview of judicial and non-judicial. Okay, forced sale of property. Foreclosure requires a forced sale of property commonly through an auction, which you know as a sheriff's sale. How many have been to a sheriff's sale? Anybody? Lately? Have you been there lately? I'm hearing lately things are changing, but formerly, what happens at a sheriff's sale? Who wants to say? Who wants to talk about it?
The banks are generally by the...
Yeah, the banks are there with a representative, and they're
$100, $200.
going to buy it for $100. Usually, if someone wants to buy it, they can go there, but are they going to be able to buy it for a lot less than what is? The banks are going to put it up to what is what? What is owed. So who would want to come buy the property for what it's owed when it's not at a market value? What I am hearing in Florida and elsewhere is that in some of the townships, the banks are actually letting it go for less than what is owed. Which, am I surprised? No. It's a way for them not to keep getting them back to go into foreclosure. Because at 50 to 100,000, you think they want these foreclosures?
No.
No, they don't. So I'm hearing that you can actually go to a sheriff's sale and buy a property for a lot less than what's owed. So that's one way for them to get rid of it. But how it usually works is it goes back to the bank. How with an I? Goes back to the, thank you. How? Involuntarily. Goes back to the bank because they don't want it. And usually it's for $100, which really just takes care of the court costs and whatever else it is that they do. But that's what happens at a sheriff's sale. Usually they have to list it among the legal and judicial notices in the local newspaper. Okay, you need at least, I think, 2 newspapers. Scheduled sale of property is published for a specific number of weeks prior to the sheriff's sale. It's published 2 weeks before in Florida. Now, your, I don't know if you call them townships here, I don't know what you call them here. Counties. Your county may have different criteria. You have to find out what it is for your county. Buyer considerations in red. Opportunity for the property inspections can be what? Negligible or extremely limited. So can you inspect an REO property before it's an REO?
Not unless you break it.
Which many do.
They do.
Let me tell you another story Ed, who is the REO specialist in Ohio, talked about. Talked about walking into a property, he had an agent. Now, do I have any REO specialists in here? Okay, we do. All right, REO specialists, they have to know their inventory. They don't put it on the market and not see it. Anyway, Ed had this property on the market. By the way, how often do you go look at your properties, Patty?
Once a month.
Once a month? How about you?
It's supposed to be once a week.
Once a week. Well, most people do once a week to once a month, whenever they can get to it, but it's usually not rare. Anyway, this agent walks up to the house, looks like a normal house. She opens the door to go in, the whole back wall is gone. They had come through the back, taken off the whole back wall to come in and take and strip the house of everything. So of course the agent calls up Ed and says, "Ed, have you seen this property?" He said, "No, tell me about it." Of course he saw the property. Of course, so anyway, that could happen. All right, so you will have no opportunity for inspection. Is a sheriff's sale a good place to buy a property? No, because number one, you can't get in to inspect it. Number two, you don't know what the are in the house. Liens and loans unless you do a what? Title search. So if you're going to take a client there, you want to make sure you get a buyer's agent agreement and make sure they're going to pay you. You can take them there. Also need to know, buyers may be responsible for evicting occupants. You buy at a sheriff's sale, you got to get those people out.
They'll be. That's just ugly.
Very ugly.
Yeah.
Ed does that all day long. Okay? Buyers, also another need to know in red, buyers may be responsible for paying outstanding liens. That's why you do the what?
Search.
Title search. You got all this? Moving on. Another need to know, buyers may not receive clear title at the sheriff's sale. Now remember we said at the sheriff's sale, by the way, you have to give, I believe it's 20% down, and they have 10 days after the sale is done to come and redeem their property, even though it's not on the books as a redemption period. Somehow you have 10 days in Florida, and you have to get an attorney to find out why. I really don't know. I just need my original background.
Okay.
Buyers may be impacted in the states that offer borrowers the right of redemption. We know Florida doesn't have any, but they will give you 10 days. Again, the redemption property is the right of borrower to recover property after the foreclosure sale. Before foreclosure, what is it called? Reinstatement. Remember back then? This morning? This morning happened. I was here. Right there. And that redemption varies from state to state. I told you you've got to involve his handouts if you have property in other states. By the way, the redemption period in Colorado is 75 days. Because why? I don't have any days for foreclosure. So when they don't give you any days for foreclosure, they have to give you more of a redemption period. So you'll find the states that are title theory states will have longer redemption period than the ones that are lien theory. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. You did? Unlikely, okay. Only because in a foreclosure, who takes care of all the liens and loans and everything else? The bank. So is it a safe thing to buy an REO property? Yeah. You don't have to worry about the liens. The bank's taking care of it. Okay? So if the borrower makes good, the title can be what? Recovered. Okay, when property fails to sell at auction, when the foreclosed property doesn't attract bidders at the auction, the property is now considered what? REO. The gavel came down, it's foreclosed on, now it belongs to who? The bank. In a lien theory state. REO means ownership of the property or asset has been what? Involuntarily transferred to the lender. Now, before it went into foreclosure, who was the guy at the bank we spoke to? One more time? Now that it's an REO property, we no longer speak to the loss mitigation specialist. Now we speak to the asset manager. Okay? Nothing to be confused about. I make it very simple. Very simple. So now, if we want to talk to anybody, it's going to have to be the who? Asset manager. You think the asset manager's talking to you? No. They're talking to the REO agent. Because now the asset manager is like the what? With an S. The seller. Asset manager is a seller. And as the seller, he hires a listing agent, and those listing agents are usually called REO specialists. Okay, because they have a relationship with asset managers. Now, anybody can become an REO specialist. The way I would suggest you do that, and we spent a lot of time in the previous class talking about it, we don't have time in this class, but if you want to become an REO specialist, you might want to start hobnobbing with some who? With who? Asset managers. Now, not every bank has an asset manager. Some of them outsource it. So unless you know the names of the outsourced companies, you won't be able to find the asset managers. But there's one sure way of getting to talk to the asset managers. You might want to go, and every year they have one, to the Asset Managers Convention. So if you're interested, you want to go to the Asset Managers Convention. If you Google Asset Managers Convention, you're going to find that the one next year is in Australia.
Great. Let's all go.
Well, you probably have already been. Okay. All right? Listing REO properties. Know what you're agreeing to. Because if you ask these REO specialists, they're going to tell you they're responsible for the house and everything in the house. And especially getting the people out of the house. So they're responsible for getting somebody to fix the house up, watching the house, make sure nothing happens to it, repairing windows and doors and everything else, getting the people out. Once it goes into foreclosure, they have to have an eviction specialist, or many of the REO specialists like Ed, he's got other companies under his company that do all these things, so he gets paid, his whole company gets paid for every one of those things.